So thank you all for joining us today, and it's a pleasure to have you all. So the topic today is, it's quite relevant, I think, because we are seeing increasing international regulation around sustainability in business, and more than kind of the international push, locally we're living in the midst of very extreme impacts of pollution. So I mean, coming from Punjab, I know several of you might be joining us from there today. So it's probably one of the worst smog seasons that we've seen in the history of Pakistan. Increasingly, climate change is impacting our crops, our weather patterns, the agri-sector, water and food security, as well as, of course, human health. You can look at other impacts from businesses on our local environment, including impacts on water, upstream and downstream uses of different resources, and they're impacting everything from our health as well as the future of our generations. So I wanted to kick off the discussion today. Basically, Zuhaib, this question is addressed to you. You've been working on sustainable housing designed for diverse clients, ranging from slum dwellers and, of course, climate refugees, as well as people displaced by floods and other climate impacts, to wealthy homeowners living in really elite parts of Pakistan. So can you talk about some of the aspects of sustainable design in modern building and architecture?
First of all, thank you very much for having me over here. Maha, when I think of sustainability and in the field of design, and my experience has been, like you said, in working for people in slums as well as the elite, one thing that I can share and is very important is that the definition of sustainability has to change, and it has to be pertinent to the context in which you are designing and for the people that you are designing. So for example, when we think of slums, a lot of the design decisions that we make, for example, that I make, are going to be based on how durable the structure is going to be. And while I'm thinking of this, maybe a selection of a material might be one which has a high carbon footprint. But in my understanding, when we work for them, longevity is extremely important. Whereas when we look at, for example, designing for the elite, it is possible that the definition is different. And in that context, we will have a different set of principles. For example, the selection of materials, what we can offer in terms of renewable energy sources and so on. So this is something that I can tell you, that the definition or how we think of sustainability has to change from context to context depending on who we are designing for.
And of course, there's an aspect of affordability with sustainability as well, right? So you might want to design for long-term sustainability, but the pricing of that might be beyond, let's say, the reach of certain customers or clients.
Yes, absolutely. And this affordability is a very tricky word, because what is affordable? एंड मतलब मैं आपको एक कहानी सुना सकता हूँ कि एक दफ़ा मैं एक जगह बैठा था और मैं बता रहा था कि मैं स्लम्स में मैंने काम किया और ये मैंने घर बनाया है. तो मैंने उनको कहा, उन्होंने, एक साहब थे, उन्होंने मुझसे पूछा कि ये आपने कितने रुपीस पर स्क्वायर फुट पे बना. तो मैंने उनको बताया कि जी मैंने 2200 रुपये पर स्क्वायर फुट पे बनाया था. तो उन्होंने कहा कि यार ये आपने क्या किया, ये तो 1600 रुपये पर स्क्वायर फुट पे मैं बना देता हूँ. तो उसके ऊपर मैंने उनको पलट के कहा कि ये आप बताएं कि आपने जो घर बनाया था, क्या वो ऐसा था कि आप उसमें ख़ुद रहना पसंद करेंगे? तो वो बेचारे नाराज़ हो गए, चुप हो गए. तो मेरा ज़ाविया नज़र ये है कि हम जब ऐसे कॉन्टेक्स्ट के अंदर डिज़ाइन करते हैं, हो सकता है कि हमारे लिए अफोर्डेबिलिटी जो है वो एक डिफरेंट सेंस रखती है, मगर इन प्रिंसिपल जो मेरा प्रिंसिपल है वो ये है कि इट शुड बी अ डिग्निफाइड ड्वेलिंग. मतलब इस किस्म की चीज़ जो हम चाहते हैं कि पूरे पाकिस्तान में हो. एक जो चीज़ हमें वाज़े तौर पे अपने शहरों में नज़र आती है कि फॉर्मल सिटी और इनफॉर्मल सिटी के अंदर जो दराड़ है वो बहुत ज़्यादा है. और मुझे लगता है कि हम सब की ये ख्वाहिश होनी चाहिए कि ये दराड़ आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ख़त्म हो जाए. तो कोशिश ये होनी चाहिए कि हम जब सस्टेनेबिलिटी के बारे में सोचें या कंस्ट्रक्शन मेथडोलॉजी के बारे में सोचें, सिलेक्शन ऑफ मटेरियल्स के बारे में सोचें, कोशिश ये होनी चाहिए कि हमारा एक विज़न हो और वो ये हो कि पूरा शहर एक जैसा नज़र आए और एक ही स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ लिविंग की कोशिश हो.
Thank you, Zuhaib. You highlighted a very important aspect, I think, of sustainability, which is, reducing the gap between the rich and the poor, and basically आपने जैसे बात की कि wanting to live in a house that you are able to live in yourself rather than treating, people in society differently based on what they can afford. So our ultimate goal should be to reduce that gap, and that's, I think, a very important component of social sustainability, which we sometimes tend to overlook when we're doing any kind of intervention or initiative. Sikandar, so the next question is for you. You've been part of the World Economic Forum and you've been working with Engro Corporation, which is one of Pakistan's largest conglomerates, on driving strategic partnerships globally. So how can local organizations in Pakistan, so we have, of course, a big corporate sector locally as well, how can they position themselves to align with international sustainability best practices? And secondly, do you see a business value for ESG, environment, society, and governance, or sustainability among international investors?
Yeah. Can you all hear me? In the back? Okay, super. Thank you, Maha, and thank you everyone for spending your Sunday with us. So Maha, just a small correction. I have not been part of the World Economic Forum. I've been part of their communities. One of them is called the Global Shapers Community, and some expert networks as well. It's a very valid question on where do we see ourselves and where the world is heading. If we look at the world today, the increasing discussion or the discourse is towards being more sustainable, being towards sustainable as a very holistic view as well, not just environmental sustainable, but social and the governance sustainable as well. If I give you one example, just hypothetical example, let's say you have a business that your parents have been running for last 20, 30 years, and now you're about to take over that business. Let's say they are selling rice to Europe, exporting rice to Europe. The business they were running, they had the agreement that's completely different. Europe, for example, is redefining the sustainable elements. If, let's say, your crop is not to that standard of sustainability, they are not going to take it from you. So when your generation comes in, our generation comes in, we need to redefine our alignment towards sustainability as well. If we talk about the global, you mentioned the World Economic Forum. The founder of the World Economic Forum has a book called Stakeholder Capitalism, where the idea is redefined that traditionally your focus was on shareholders, maximizing value for your shareholders. You would keep them as the highest priority. If your shareholders are happy, your business is thriving. But right now, it's stakeholders, and that stakeholders, as I say, go far beyond. They go for your climate, they go for your environment, they go for social, multiple other layers as well. And I agree with what Zohaib said. I think where we are today, we have a unique opportunity to redefine or reframe how we live. Everything, all the rules that we live by are made by humans. Who's to say the chair has always have to be like this? How can we redefine it and rethink it for the future generations, not just for ourselves? When we leave this world, the generations who are to come, how do we leave a better world for them as well? I think that presents a unique opportunity. The title of the session is it a duty for businesses or is it an opportunity? I see it both, but more than the duty, especially if you look at the private sector, more than the duty, the morality, it has to have a business case complement to it. And that's what I think we are in a unique position to redefine what is innovation for us in terms of sustainability. And I think we're in a good spot where we can bring the holistic sustainability in picture as well.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a very valid point. And in fact, based on my own experience, I'm seeing that Pakistan made the textile sector, because they export the most to countries in Europe. They're probably way ahead in terms of other sectors, in terms of environmental as well as social sustainability, because unke liye business case ban gaya, right? The exporters are not going to buy from them unless they're meeting their criteria for environment and society. So absolutely, I think that's a great point. Ahmed, over to you. So, I mean, you've gotten into a sector, right, garbage can, which largely has been falling in the informal economy. Pakistan made trash collection, waste management. It's not really a formal sector, but your initiative really focuses on potentially, moving it into the formal sector. So, can you tell me about some of the challenges and opportunities that you faced when you were setting up this initiative, as well as overall for waste management and recycling in Pakistan?
Red kar do.
Hello, hello. नहीं? Can everybody hear me otherwise?
The virtual audience would not be able to hear you.
Ah.
Can we move this?
Thank you so much. Now, yeah, that conversation is happening. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, there's another one. Hello.
No worries.
Can everybody hear me? Perfect. Um, well, before we get into that conversation about the challenges and everything, I'd like to mention that instead of like I agree with largely with what both of my colleagues were saying, but instead of say redefining sustainability, I'd like to say that we need to reclaim that word, because it's always been defined in as per the definition. We just haven't been practicing what it actually means, and we've been gone off track, or our previous generations have sort of gone off track and have included almost exploitation within sustainability as well, which of course are complete polar opposites. Similarly, we need to redefine the word or reclaim the word development and also progress, because within development and within progress, sustainability is inherent as well. If there's no sustainability, then there absolutely cannot be progress. Right. So speaking of the waste management industry, and through the waste management industry, once I saw all of these challenges that I'm going to mention, I moved into the climate sphere and the environmental issues as well, because all of them are very intersectional. The biggest challenge that I felt, other than the issues that are connected with it, was to convince people to actually pay for their trash management. And that includes corporations, that includes individuals as well. Because for some reason we think that अच्छा कचरा हो गया, अब जो कहते हैं जो कोई और आएगा और वो साफ़ करेगा एंड सो ऑन, और जो कोई और यानी उस तरह का काम जो कि हम खुद नहीं साफ़ करना चाह रहे, कोई और अगर आके साफ़ करके जाए तो उसको बस 100-200 रुपए दे दो एंड जो कहते हैं बस वो कर लेगा. Whereas waste management is an essential service. So that's one of the biggest challenge के you need to pay for it, and because of that जो आपकी affordability वाली जो बात थी, I think that a lot of sustainable practices, at least at this point in time, would be a cost sink of sorts. इसमें जोहिब से भी कल रात को भी बात हो रही थी कि इसमें जो है you have to pay for it, you have to care for it. For example, I'll ask everybody a question over here. In your households, a bedroom of course is important, a dining room is important, a TV lounge is important, but what's the utility of a restroom? Toilet क्यों है आप लोगों के घर पे? Or yeah, do you guys have a toilet at home? How many people have a toilet at home? Everybody does. It's an essential. So it's essentially, what is it for? It's for our waste management, and we spend a lot of money in it, right? So then when it comes to trash, where are your dustbins? How many dustbins do you have? कुछ या आप बाहर फेंक देते हैं उसके बाद अब for example at AKU dustbins are the same color as the pillar. There's pink marble and the pillar is pink marble as well, so it's essentially camouflage. For some reason we hide dustbins क्योंकि हमें वो लगता है कि जी अच्छा डस्टबिन होगा तो इसका मतलब है कि कचरा होगा यहाँ पे, या जो कहते हैं गंदगी वाली चीज़ होगी. For example DHA में तो कचरा कुंडियाँ हैं ही नहीं. There's no dumpsters or anything for some reason. So dustbins need to be out there. They need to be right in front of you, because if anything, जो मैं reclaim का जो लफ्ज़ मैं इस्तेमाल कर रहा हूँ कि dustbins are a sign of cleanliness. It means कि okay, these people care about that. But in our culture, for some reason, we've hidden it, right? So that's why we need to take waste management as an essential service. उसके अलावा इसमें क्या-क्या चीज़ें, इसमें child labor का भी मसला of course आता है. Child labor का मसला क्यों आता है? क्योंकि you're not paying the parents enough. You're not paying the janitors minimum wage. You're not caring for the janitors' safety. And यानी हम लोग 100-200 रुपए किसी जमादार को दे देते हैं and that's about it. And okay, so another term that I wanted to like have a discussion with you like about was on the word development. Development, I believe, has sustainability is in as inherent. Let's do another thought experiment. You want to build a water tank in your home, right? A water tank in your home. It's ज़रूरी है पानी का जो जमा करने के लिए, ज़ख़ीरा करने के लिए. Where do you build it? Where do you build a water tank in your home if you're living in a bungalow?
Underground?
Underground. चलें अंडरग्राउंड जो है पथरीली ज़मीन है, अंडरग्राउंड जगह नहीं हो पा रही. Where do you build it then? Rooftop या टैंक. Sure. अच्छा, if you're living in an apartment, perhaps a balcony, perhaps restroom के ऊपर छत पे ज़रा सा उसमें, or if nothing else, you bring in water bottles and you store it over there in some space. So you've planned it just for that water tank. Rooftop, second option, third option, fourth option, fifth option, sixth option, plan A, B, C, D, E, F, so that your home does not get inconvenience, so you don't get inconvenience या आपके घर पे कोई और वो. कभी ऐसा हुआ है कि चले बेगम बिस्तर हटा देते हैं, यहाँ पे पानी की टंकी बना देते हैं बेडरूम के उसमें बिस्तर की जगह पे. जो आपका जो बिस्तर है उसके ऊपर गद्दा रख दीजिएगा, तकिया रख दीजिएगा. बच्चों के जो है बिस्तर हटा के उसके ऊपर गद्दा रख दीजिएगा, तकिया रख दीजिएगा. क्या मसला वो जो टैंक के ऊपर. या हाउ अबाउट टीवी लाउंज के बीच में बिटवीन द सोफा एंड द टीवी यू लाइक देयर इज अ टेबल ओवर दैट. लेट्स गेट रिड ऑफ द टेबल, लेट्स बिल्ड अ वाटर टैंक इंस्टेड. और उसके ऊपर जो चीज़ें आप रख लें, नहीं कहते हैं एफिशिएंट यूज ऑफ स्पेस, राइट? कभी किया है आप लोगों ने इस तरह से? हाउ अबाउट किचन में चूल्हे की जगह चूल्हा यानी उसके ऊपर चूल्हा रख दीजिएगा. चलें वो छोड़ दें, बीच में जो काउंटर स्पेस जो आपकी फ्रिज है, चूल्हा है या कैबिनेट्स, उसके बीच में जो स्पेस होती है उसके ऊपर आप बैठ के बना लीजिएगा, वहाँ पे पानी की टंकी बना लें. सो इफ़ यू नॉट, आई एम अज्यूमिंग कि नहीं, तीनों में से कोई ऑप्शन किसी ने नहीं किए होंगे. सो इफ़ यू प्लानिंग सो मच फॉर दैट, इसमें आपके आर्किटेक्ट की भी वो बात आती है. ये अगर जो कहते हैं कल कोई बना लें डिज़ाइन तो. So if you're planning for your home so much, and then you're not planning for the city, and you're building it on, say, stormwater drains, you're not having dumpsters or trash cans anywhere.
I would like to.
I think Zohaib has a comeback, wants to comment on that. So
इन्होंने इतने मज़े के इन्होंने तस्वीरें खींच दी जहन में कि आप जी वो बिस्तर हटा दें और वहाँ पे वाटर टैंक बना दें. वो हम क्योंकि क्रिएटिव माइंड है वो फ़ौरन मुझे नज़र भी आना शुरू हो जाता है. मगर यार अहमद, मुझे लगता है कि आप जिस चीज़ की बात कर रहे हैं ना, उनका कदरों से ताल्लुक़ है. मुझे ज़ाती तौर पे लगता है कि हम एक सफाई पसंद कौम नहीं है. हम गार्बेज डिस्पोज़ल के बारे में ख़्याल नहीं रखते. ये हो सकता है आप लोगों ने भी इस चीज़ का तजर्बा किया हो, मैंने किया है कि एक बहुत आप किसी नए शख्स के साथ गाड़ी में बैठे हैं जो पढ़ा लिखा शख्स है, वो भी हो सकता है कि अपना शीशा नीचे करके कुछ कचरा बाहर फेंक दे. आपको ये हर जगह नज़र आता है. मैं झील सैफुल मुलूक में गया तो वहाँ मुझे पानी में पैम्पर नज़र आया, मुझे बहुत बुरा लगा. पता नहीं क्या वजह है कि यार ये हम शायद गार्बेज डिस्पोजेबल के बारे में संजीदा नहीं है. हो मेरे सिर्फ एक छोटा सा नुक्ता है, वो ये है कि आज का जो उन्वान है वो ये है कि क्या सस्टेनेबिलिटी हमारी ड्यूटी है या अपॉर्चुनिटी. तो गालिबन हमें उसको पहले ड्यूटी समझना है, और उसके अंदर से जो नेक्स्ट स्टेप है वो ये है कि अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ हमें तलाश करनी है. पहले हो सकता है कि हमें सबसे पहले इसको एक ड्यूटी समझना है, और फिर जब ये हमारी कदरों में आ जाएगा उसके बाद हम उसके लिए डिसिप्लिन क्रिएट करेंगे, हम उसके लिए सिस्टम्स डिज़ाइन करेंगे. मुझे याद है मेरे वालिदैन कोरिया गए थे तो वो इतने मतलब हैरान होके आए थे कि वहाँ पे उनके पास बाकायदा सिस्टम्स थे कि 3 रंगों के डब्बे थे, हर शख्स को अपना गार्बेज ख़ुद अलहदा करना था और उनको उसके अंदर डालना था. तो वो बहुत एक ज़बरदस्त सिस्टम था. मगर सिस्टम्स तब आते हैं जब एक कौम एक चीज़ को अहम समझती है. हो सकता है कि पहले हमें इस चीज़ को अहम समझना है, सस्टेनेबिलिटी को, एंड by definition also garbage disposal and other things.
So just to close that comment, but like I agree with what you. समझना कि मैं ये भी कहूँगा कि समझना नहीं ड्यूटी है, क्योंकि as I said कि that pamper in that झील is not sustainability. It's just not, you cannot define, it's black or white, right? So it's not कि we lost the definition of sustainability. We haven't been practicing it at all. So it is a duty, and from therein opportunities come in. So I agree with what you're saying.
Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you, Zohaib. So I think what I'm understanding is, first of all, we as a society don't really talk about waste management or our footprint, could be environmental or water or garbage disposal, basically, and this applies to individuals for sure, but businesses as well. And I think the purpose of really having this discussion or the sustainability debate, as we like to say, and this applies to climate change, कि हमारा जो impact है हम उसकी ownership नहीं ले रहे हैं, right? We're leaving it for other people to deal with or the next generation to deal with. We just want to live in the present, meet our own energy needs, meet our own water needs, breathe clean air while we can. But हम ये नहीं देख रहे कि 20 साल बाद क्या होगा या 5 साल बाद क्या होगा या will our children or will the animals or will the trees be able to survive the destruction that we are creating. So I think it really starts with having that consciousness that this is our impact and this is our problem and our responsibility, and then of course out of that we can talk about opportunities. So yeah, I think that was a good leeway maybe into the second part of our discussion today. So Zohaib, I mean, you've been working on sustainable housing and flood design, and you worked on the Ittihad Model Village in Ehsanpur with Engro Foundation. I think this was in the post-disaster 2011 floods ke baad. Several corporations across Pakistan worked in partnership with the government to develop these climate resilient model villages and rehabilitate the people. Basically 20% of houses across the country had been washed away by these floods 2011 May, and 22 May it was even worse. I mean, I think the impact was even higher. So can you tell us a bit more about this project? How did it work? How did the private sector work with the government on this? And is pe aapne kis qisam ki interventions lie to make sure it was disaster resilient? And essentially, I mean, can this kind of private public partnership model be scaled up or replicated in other areas for similar climate disasters?
जी महा, मैंने 2011 में जो फ्लड्स आए उस पर भी काम किया और 2022 में आए उसमें भी काम किया. जो 2011 का आप जिस चीज़ की बात करी हैं, इट इज़ इन माई माइंड वन ऑफ द वेरी सक्सेसफुल प्रोजेक्ट्स जो पाकिस्तान में हुए हैं. ये जब फ्लड्स आए थे और लोग डिस्प्लेस हो गए थे, तो पंजाब हुकूमत, एंग्रो फाउंडेशन, पाकिस्तान पॉवर्टी एलिविएशन फ़ंड और 3-4 और इदारे थे, उन सब ने मिल के हाथ जोड़े और फिर उन्होंने कहा कि हम यहाँ पे हाउसिंग इनके लिए करते हैं. जब उन्होंने हाउसिंग की तो शुरू के अंदर उनके डिज़ाइंस जो हैं वो बिल्कुल दे वर नॉट रिस्पॉन्डिंग टू देयर कल्चरल कॉन्टेक्स्ट. एंड जब हमने उसका फिर डिज़ाइन कंटिन्यू किया तो उसके अंदर हमने स्टडी किया कि वो किस तरीके से रहते हैं, और हमने ये कोशिश की कि विलेज ऐसा डिज़ाइन किया जाए विच रिस्पॉन्ड्स टू देयर कॉन्टेक्स्ट. तो हमने उनको सहन वाले घर बना के दिए. सहन के साथ बरामदा था, बरामदे के साथ कमरे थे, और वहाँ पे बाकायदा प्रॉपर रोड्स बनी थी. फिर हर मोहल्ले बने थे. मोहल्ले के अंदर एक बीच में एक बहुत बड़ा बाग था, और उसके साथ हमने इंजीनियरिंग के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से भी सस्टेनेबिलिटी के ऊपर काम किया था. जो दूसरे लोग थे इस प्रोजेक्ट में काम कर रहे थे, उन्होंने ये तजवीज़ दी थी. तो इसका एक बहुत मज़ेदार एक एग्ज़ाम्पल ये है कि उन्होंने उस बाग के बीच में एक ऐसा झूला लगाया था कि जब वो गोल घूमता है, जब बच्चे उसके ऊपर गोल घूमते हैं तो वो पानी को पंप कर देता है और वहाँ से फिर पानी आता है. तो ये बड़ी एक मज़ेदार एक इंजीनियरिंग मार्वल था. उसके साथ ये सोलर पावर भी वहाँ पे इस्तेमाल किया गया था. तो ये एक ऐसा प्रोजेक्ट था कि पब्लिक, जैसे आपने कहा, पब्लिक सेक्टर, प्राइवेट सेक्टर, एंड मैं सर्विस इंडस्ट्री से हूँ, तो हमने भी इसके लिए प्रो बोनो काम किया था. सब ने हाथ जोड़े थे और फिर एक साथ काम किया था. मुझे लगता है कि इसका बेइंतहा पोटेंशियल है. मुझे लगता है कि जब ज़ाहिर है कोई आफत आती है तो लोगों की नज़रों के सामने ये सारी चीज़ें आती हैं, और लोग उस वक्त बहुत हसास होते हैं और अपना वक्त भी निकालते हैं, अपनी सर्विसेज भी देते हैं और कोशिश करते हैं कि कोई अच्छी चीज़ बन जाए. तो मुझे लगता है कि इसका तो बहुत पोटेंशियल है, और ग़ालिबन शायद हमें किसी आफत का इंतज़ार नहीं करना चाहिए. एक और जो चीज़ मैं समझता हूँ वो ये है कि जब इस किस्म के प्रोजेक्ट्स होते हैं तो इसमें से क्या बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस थी, क्या अच्छी चीज़ें हमने देखी कि करके सीखी, उनको हमें फैलाना चाहिए लोगों तक, और ताकि अगली दफ़ा के लिए खुदा न खास्ता तो लोग इसके लिए प्रिपेयर्ड हों.
Absolutely. I think these are all great points, and I was incidentally at Engro at that time. So ये project, in fact, there were volunteers from Engro who went and served in Ehsanpur. 2 हफ्ते उन्होंने off लिए थे अपनी personal leave से, and they went to work with the refugees. और मुझे एक चीज़ याद है कि घर की चाबियाँ उन्होंने औरतों को दी थी. This was one of the big interventions. They said कि the women are the decision makers and they will want what's best for their generations. तो और उनको ये था कि आदमी घर बेच के कहीं और मूव हो जाएंगे
जी,
because ये
और
brand new घर बने थे,
आप
but the deeds were in the names of the women, so that was another I think
एंड दिस केम फ्रॉम रिसर्च, और रिसर्च के थ्रू उन्होंने ये फैसले किए थे, और
बिल्कुल।
उससे आपके जो सारे मोहल्ले थे वो आबाद हो गए थे.
Exactly. एक और एक इसका aspect था, it was around sourcing livelihoods, right? So these people had lost their incomes, their livelihoods, उनके पूरे घर बह गए थे. They were practicing agriculture, पूरा वो land underwater था. I think one of the initiatives was that Engro Foods at that time, अब it's been taken over by another company, but उन्होंने ना एक milk collection center उधर set up किया था, which collects milk from all these farmers, and they'd given livestock to each household ताकि उनका एक source of income जनरेशन डेवलप हो.
मुझे ये प्रोजेक्ट उस वक्त इतना अच्छा लगा था बिकॉज एंग्रो फाउंडेशन ने एक पूरा फ्रेमवर्क फॉर सस्टेनेबिलिटी बनाया था, जिसके अंदर उन्होंने इकोनॉमिक सस्टेनेबिलिटी, लाइवलीहुड के ऊपर भी काम किया, सोशल पे भी किया, और फिर उन्होंने ये सारी चीज़ें मुहैया की. वहाँ पे स्कूल्स भी बने थे. उन सब की कोशिश ये थी कि अगर आप घर बना देते हैं वो आबाद नहीं होते. वो आबाद तब होंगे जब लोगों के पास सोर्सेज ऑफ लाइवलीहुड भी होंगी, वहाँ स्कूल जाने के भी मौके होंगे. तो ये हुआ, तो इसीलिए ये कामयाब प्रोजेक्ट था.
Right. So it has to be a whole of kind of society approach. You can't just focus on एक aspect of the intervention.
Absolutely.
बिल्कुल ऐसी है. Thank you. So Sikandar, you've been working a lot with the Balochistan Youth Action Committee on climate-related challenges. How do you see the private sector and philanthropy collaborating to make truly impactful gains towards sustainability? And of course, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation it's one of the biggest philanthropic foundations in the world. Pakistan we're among the top most philanthropic nations in the world according to PCP. हम लोग बहुत कसरत से, especially in the wake of disasters like हमारे 2005 में earthquake आया था, floods पे लोगों ने, I mean, when the COVID-19 pandemic happened, people really gave, from the smallest to the biggest amounts, and इसी तरह हमारी economy चल रही है अभी तक माशाल्लाह से. So in that sense, how do you see private sector and philanthropy collaborating towards sustainability gains? ये नहीं हो कि हमारा short term knee jerk reaction हो after every disaster के suddenly we're all working on disaster relief, और हम like ration पहुंचा रहे हैं लोगों को and all of that. How can we make the transition more kind of long term and sustainable?
Yeah. Thank you Maha for the question. Just let me quickly give a context of the organization, Balochistan Youth Action Committee, that we've co-founded. So we co-founded BIAC during 2019, during COVID-19, the early peak period. Balochistan, as you know, is not just the least developed, but also, unfortunately, quite neglected region of Pakistan as well. When, unfortunately, the natural disasters or any of sort occur, we unfortunately don't even expect the government to start engaging for the people. So the premise was this very same thing, that we start empowering or enabling the local volunteers who we call champions, and then they in turn work in their own communities for their uplift. We have 4 areas that right now we're working on. One is disaster response, as you mentioned. One is climate change. One is health, and then education. One binding thing among all 4 of these things is the climate change. So majority of the disasters that we have been active were climate induced, except one was a Harnai earthquake, but somehow you can link it with climate change as well. Health as well, we work on the disaster response health, the first aid and all, that's again related to climate change. I think collaboration in that sense is the key. Organizations like BIAC, we don't have any resources. You mentioned Engro. I'm part of Engro as well as my full-time work. Organizations like Engro, certainly there's private sector. There's a model called the PPP model. You might be familiar, not the Pakistan People's Party, the public-private model, partnership model. But I would go one step further. The word is talking about public-private philanthropy model. That's where, so public sector has the vast reach. For example, आप पोलियो देख लें, पोलियो में the campaign is run by government and they are going everywhere, मतलब literally on donkeys, on foot, and snow everywhere. Unfortunately, still there. It's a disease that we're still trying to combat. But the idea is that government के पास वो resources हैं, they could go everywhere. Private sector has the muscles, but organizations like BIAC or Garbage Can or where Zohaib is working on, they are local, homegrown organizations. Very small, but they have the local knowledge. The strength is that they understand the local dynamics. And I think this is where the public-private philanthropy collaborations come. I give you a small example. So just like Zohaib, we were quite active in the floods of 2022. Balochistan was very hard hit, and our volunteers were active. We were in Nasirabad, we were in Kalat. We helped around 18,000 families. But despite the fact that you were helping, or at least facilitating to help, when you're on the ground, it becomes very tough. You become helpless. I give you a small example. We were in Corrado, which is on the main city highway, and we were there 1 month after the flood, almost 1 month, like 20 days. They said you were the first one to come to help. And there were kids literally with diseases that could easily be, tackled. But because of the complete lack of healthcare, those were literally on the bed and fighting for their lives. And when you go through such things, it becomes quite challenging for you as well, because you're like, what am I doing? Why am I even bringing food? Food everyone can bring one way or another. मतलब ज़रिया पैदा हो जाता है. What else can you do? And we were battling with this throughout. We sat together with our team, like, what else can we do? And then someone said, okay, how about we do 1 or 2 houses? That is long term. We can think of it. Okay, that's good. We start houses thinking. And then we identified a couple of partners. We identified one partner called Hands Pakistan. They have a large presence in Pakistan. You mentioned about the local challenges, right? So we partner with Hands. We partner with 2 other organizations, Deutsche Bank, which is a German bank, a private sector, British Asian Trust, a global philanthropy. We work together to identify an area in Balochistan जहाँ पे हम ये घर बना सकें. From a very simple idea, 1-2 घर, we managed to build 32 houses that are climate resilient. Each house has a solar panel with 1 fan, 1 light. There is a community mosque for the whole village. It's like a model village. And there is a water filtration plant for the village. And when we went there in Sohbatpur area, I was shocked. It was so hot. If you're from Lahore, if you think Karachi right now is hot, Sohbatpur is boiling. That's like literally Jafarabad region was one of the hottest just few years ago on earth. And the reason we were really proud and happy is the fact that the houses we built, it was in consultation with the locals. We were initially going to bring bamboo. We were like, okay, bamboo is cheap. It is very cool. It's circular. It's going to go back to earth. It's amazing. When we asked our volunteers to do a survey on the ground, they asked their families and all. They came back with the survey responses. They said, यहाँ पे दीमक हैं, termites हैं, bamboo would not survive, and the way it is hot, bamboo will not be insulated enough. So we're like, okay, what can we do? They were like, brick. Brick is something that is locally produced. It's also insulated. Garmi andar itni nahi aati, tapish itni nahi aati, so we do that. So I think that's where the element of collaboration comes in. So bigger organizations, they bring in their resources, they bring in their muscles. Smaller micro organizations that are present on grassroots, they bring their local knowledge. And I think that collaboration is the key.
Absolutely, no. I think that's a great point. Thank you. Thank you, Sikandar. So I think one very important aspect, जो हम like as the businesses, as the private sector, that we tend to miss is this local knowledge, right? Because again, I think the bamboo example is really interesting, because I know that bamboo has been used in Sindh, like by certain foundations for post-disaster rehabilitation, and it's a sustainable material. But I think that local knowledge is so important, and तभी आपको पता चलती है when you engage with the communities. In fact, Engro wala जो था project, it was done with Ansar Management Company, which I think now they've significantly scaled up. But they actually got the people to participate in the building of the houses, ताकि वो एक sense of ownership उनको feel हो. ये नहीं हो कि तैयार उनको घर मिल रहे हैं. One aspect of it was that they should have a stake in it. They should build it themselves. They should feel ownership of it. ताकि that sense of responsibility comes only when you value something. आपने अपना उसमें effort खुद लगाया हो. So
and can I just add one thing? ये इतनी आपने ज़बरदस्त बात बताई. I think this selection of bamboo as a material for building, especially for people who are affected by floods and vulnerable, this is such a big kind of question. यहाँ पे हमारी architecture की fraternity के अंदर ये बहुत सवाल उठा था, क्योंकि कुछ लोग ये समझते थे कि बैम्बू इज़ द बेस्ट मटेरियल बिकॉज वो कहते थे यार ये तो बड़ा सस्टेनेबल है, ग्रीन मटेरियल है, इसको ग्रीन स्टील कहते हैं वगैरह वगैरह. और जो आप लोगों से पूछें कि उनको किस चीज़ की ज़रूरत है, वो किस चीज़ में रहना पसंद करेंगे, तो इट वाज एब्सोल्युटली क्लियर कि उनको इस किस्म की चीज़ चाहिए जिससे वो हमेशा से बिल्ड करते रहें, और उनकी एक वर्नैक्युलर विजडम मौजूद है And in this case, obviously उन्होंने brick बताया, and I'm so happy to hear what you have shared कि आपने user से पूछा कि उनको किस चीज़ को अहम समझते हैं और वही इस्तेमाल किया.
Absolutely, thank you. So Ahmed, over to you. You've done a lot of work on climate justice in Pakistan, and you've highlighted, at a personal level as well as through your organization, the Pakistan Maholiyati Tahaffuz movement, the impact of unchecked development on communities living around especially large infrastructure projects at the national level. So typically हम लोग जो these large infrastructure projects, let's say it's in the energy sector, oil and gas, typically these are in rural areas, remote areas. So of course they have an impact. Sometimes the communities need to be moved to leave area for like roads or whatever. So I mean, what do you think businesses can do really to improve sustainable practices in such large infrastructure projects? Typically, I mean, what I've seen in my experience, I mean, oil and gas sector se hum log extraction to kar rahe hain certain areas se, but the people living right around that area, they don't have access to gas. Unke paas bijli nahi hai, unke paas basic peene ka pani nahi hai. They're still, using firewood and inhaling the smoke inside their houses. So how can businesses, really help or at least improve their sustainability for communities around where they operate? And also, I mean, there's something called the social license to operate, right? So for any business to survive or to do well, the community needs to have a stake in it. And here in Balochistan especially, there's been a lot of debate at the national level because, as you said, it's one of the most resource-rich provinces of the country, but the people there are not getting any of those resources. So, I mean, for these particular, large infrastructure projects, what advice would you have for businesses? How can they... I mean, your projects karne to zaruri hai, right? We need to move ahead as an economy, as a country. We all have needs. But how can they improve the lives of the communities which have been living on this land for generations, which own that land?
Right. सबसे पहले तो half my family is from Jafrabad, so I keep visiting, so I completely know how terrible it was. And thank you for that work over there. So आपका जो कि what can businesses do? But at the same time, you of course like you used help and साथ में जो philanthropy वगैरह की भी बात हुई. तो I would like businesses to understand that, and everybody over here to understand that sustainability cannot be philanthropic. Sustainability is not philanthropic. Philanthropic is सही है अपनी अच्छाई से अपने दिल के उससे आपने कुछ कर लिया जी अच्छा मेरे पास कुछ एक्स्ट्रा रखा है चलें सही है मैं साथ ही में अगर मुझे नहीं स्पेंड करना okay but you absolutely cannot sustainability cannot rely on just philanthropy. It's necessary, sustainability is necessary and it's essential. सबसे पहले तो ये समझना कि उसमें हुआ है तो it is sustainability is cost of doing business. It's not just अच्छा चलें कम्युनिटी का ख्याल कर लेते हैं कि सुई गैस से हम गैस निकाल रहे हैं चलो सही है उनको भी जो कहते हैं दे देते हैं गैस दे देते हैं जो कि अभी तक नहीं मिली. It's not that. या गुरानो में जो कहते हैं फॉर एग्जांपल जो हो रहा है जो थरकोल वगैरह के हवाले से बात हो रही है not taking names I guess but and not to be critical either but it's more यानी एक तरह से आप उसको ये कहें कि पॉजिटिव क्रिटिसिज्म के उसमें ना कंस्ट्रक्टिव क्रिटिसिज्म के उसमें managing wastewater from thar coal and or managing the environment around it, it's cost of doing business. It's necessary that it needs to be spent. Larger corporations cannot just come in and say, oh अच्छा चलें हम स्कूल बना देते हैं, oh अच्छा चलें हम philanthropy ज़रा सी वहाँ पे कर देते हैं, oh चलें कुछ घर बना देते हैं, कुछ चलें एक filter plant ऐसे ही लगा देते हैं. नहीं, that's the one thing that the private sector needs to understand. उसमें and the onus lies जो public private philanthropy जो model का that's a great model absolutely, but the onus lies on the public sector for the policy and of course spending that money. The private sector for understanding that it is cost of doing business. You have to make sure that your project is sustainable for the environment. It's not damaging everybody around it, because even if it's exploiting one bird, even if it's exploiting one thing, then of course it's not sustainable per se. देखिए अच्छा उसमें I completely understand. आपने कहा कि progress तो करनी है वो करनी है ये नहीं कि कोई development मुखालिफ चल रहे हैं. Absolutely not. My breathing itself has an impact, right? I'm removing oxygen, releasing carbon dioxide. It has an impact on it. I completely understand. But then when you go around building, say, Malir Expressway, which is connecting DHA to DHA City and Bahria essentially, and you're building it through the middle of the river, and you're saying कि कोई घर नहीं गिरेंगे पर 3,000 घर गिरा दें, और फिर you're saying कि there's no indigenous life over there and there's recorded wildlife species, so that's not sustainable at all. Think of other options. Build a. It was such a great opportunity, I believe, to build perhaps a metro or a railroad along the Malir Expressway and get people to use public transport as well. But unfortunately, we're not experimenting with it. We recently established Climate Reach, an organization which is focused on conducting research and creating awareness and everything as well. तो उसमें हम लोग climate displacement के ऊपर काम कर रहे हैं. So great work, Zohaib, of course. But then again, we're still finding people who are still displaced from the 2010 floods.
Yes.
All the way in 2022 case में we went to Dadu, we went to the outskirts of Karachi, यहाँ पे tent city की तरफ
वो अभी तक है टेंट सिटी की तरह.
हाँ टेंट सिटी पे
बिकम अ सिटी.
हाँ, और फिर जो मेहरान गोट हब के पास, so people are still displaced, people still don't have that so whatever the policies were like apparently quickly forgotten again, because it's not our culture, it's not part of our sense of duty. Yeah, we think कि अच्छा चलो philanthropy में एक ज़रा सा कुछ यानी CSR कर देंगे. Sustainable, that's the one, like if you want one piece of advice, that's the one piece of advice. Sustainability is not CSR. Sustainability is not welfare. Sustainability is not philanthropy. Sustainability is costs of doing business, and each and every business needs to understand that.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. Thank you, Shabir. So I think really the point of this discussion, and I think we all kind of agree on this, is internalizing that cost of that impact, right? So it has to be, as you said, the cost of doing business or the cost of cleaning up your mess should be part of your initial budget to begin with. Just you started the discussion with who has a bathroom in their house. Everybody does, because it's a basic human need, right? So similarly, I think for businesses, they need to realize that cleaning up their mess is a basic human need, and it needs to be internalized into their budget before starting any project or even as part of their regular day-to-day business activities. I'd like to now open up the floor for questions. So if anyone has a question, please, yes, G. If you could just say your name and then let us know who the question is for. Oh, it's right here. Okay, so our first question is from the audience. Zohaib, this is for you. So they've said Mr. Zohaib highlights the point to eliminate the discrimination of the elite and mediocre dwellings in a city. Are there any initiatives in place to do so, Zohaib?
I don't think I don't think that there are any formal staunch movements or initiatives which are trying to जैसे मैं उन fractures की बात कर रहा था, trying to end those fractures and the discrimination that you are talking about. So there are no formal structures like that, but I think a lot of people are trying to work informally, and they're working in isolation. For example, मैंने कुछ कच्ची आबादियों के अंदर कुछ घर वगैरह बनाए हैं अपनी महदूद वसाइल से, और जितना मैं कुछ कर सकता था उन चीज़ों उन प्रोजेक्ट से मैंने बहुत कुछ सीखा है. और क्योंकि मैं यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ाता रहा हूँ, तो वहाँ पे मैंने वो जो तालीमात है वो मुंतकिल की हैं, मगर मैं नहीं समझता कि मुझे कोई फॉर्मल इनिशिएटिव नज़र आ रहा है. मगर मुझे ये लगता है कि इसका शऊर अब जाग गया है, और मुझे लगता है कि आज के ज़माने में बहुत सारे लोग अब कोशिश करेंगे कि ये मिल के इसके ऊपर काम किया जाए.
Thank you for that. The next question is, what role can technology play in enabling sustainable development? So who would like to take that question? Sikandar, okay.
Yeah, not a technology expert, but so I see AI introducing our moderator, and there's a huge presence of AI and technology, which is incredible. But at the same time, I think we often forget there's a cost associated with technology and AI to sustainability as well. Just sending an email, there's a technology element. Our digital footprint, there is a sustainability element to it as well. I think that's just one point I wanted to bring here as well. Looking at Pakistan, I'm glad that conferences like these are happening, where we're discussing not just our present but our future. but also very conscious of the realities we have as well. We have a long road to go in terms of technology. If we look at our neighbors like India, in terms of technology, they're far ahead. But again, very conscious of reality, not discouraging where we are. But at the same time, I just wanted to point out that AI should not be a factor, or technology should not be a factor that should discourage us from innovations. The topic is on the sustainability, and I firmly believe that the way our forefathers, our earlier generations lived, that was a lot more sustainable. I'm not advocating that we should go back to the same. What I'm advocating is we should learn from them. We should learn how they are. I have a friend sitting in the audience. We both were talking to this guy called Michael. He's from the German Development Bank. And an example he gave regarding sustainability is that in the global north, in Europe and other areas, if you talk about a mud house, if you talk about an eco-friendly house, that's something very expensive. So that's something rich would go. They're like, okay, we're going for a weekend away in an eco-friendly house. But in countries like ours, it's a sign of, let's say, poverty or no growth. I think, how do we balance it out? The global north is coming back towards us, while we are fast running towards,
we're running after each other.
What we call the progression or development. How do we find the right balance? I give you another example. So I grew up in Balochistan. I grew up in district Khuzdar, which is central Balochistan. When we used to have water, at least in my early teenage days, we didn't have a lot of refrigerators. There was no CFC gases releasing from to the environment. There was something in a mud, something which we called surai, and in that surai there was water. That was completely circular. So if the surai breaks, it literally goes to the earth, no damage. On top of that surai, we had something called wo jo bori nahi hoti, the jute cover. Jute cover is on top of it, and a lot of time what happens ke they would throw some grains on top of it because it's already cold, there's water, and the grains would grow. So it's green on top. You take out water from it, and then it's cold as the refrigerator. I'm not saying we go back to the same roots. I'm saying there's so much traditional and ancient wisdom within our society. That is something we need to explore, whether with technology or without technology.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And technology has to be, locally sourced as well. I think it's not okay just to copy paste what the West is doing and put it, in Pakistani context.
Absolutely.
And I think the point you made about the energy consumption, the footprint of AI, yes, it's a great tool, and I think it will completely change the way we do business, the way we invest in education, etc. But what I'm reading is that they're building nuclear reactors to power Meta and Google and all of these AI platforms because the energy intensity is so high. So that's just one aspect of it, but definitely I think there are technologies out there to minimize our environmental footprint, to better measure where our impacts are. GIS now can pinpoint exactly कि आपकी gas flaring किधर होती है, emissions कहाँ से आ रहे हैं, where is your most polluted kind of ponds, where are your evaporation ponds. You can pinpoint it through GIS, and this is not something you could do 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the technologies are available, I think, for both risk assessment as well as risk management. So I think there are ways to integrate that both for businesses as well as, of course, individuals. So we have time maybe for two more questions. The next question is, how can organizations integrate sustainability into their core business strategy? So Ahmed, maybe I'll give this to you since you've already talked a little bit about this. But
Sure, but I will actually cede this question to you, and you can answer that because you have a lot more.
Okay.
Like you should have been on this side as well, but the burden of moderation fell upon you.
Sure.
So, but before that, I'll answer your the question of technology and everything as well. I don't think it's about going back all the way to the Stone Ages ya bahar ke usme, but we need to move forward with scientific knowledge and indigenous wisdom hand in hand. Because natural ventilation is a thing, and people knew that way back, and they've been, for example, University of Karachi की जो library बनी हुई है, it's all natural ventilation. It's incredible. इतने like there's इतनी गर्मी में भी there's cool winds going through. या आपने सराय की जैसे बात की, या जो मटके जो होते थे, या jute bags होते थे, those are all in like indigenous wisdom. Plastic bags are not technologically forward. If anything, उसके वजह से damages जो हो रहे हैं, तो साइंटिफिक नॉलेज भी एक प्रॉपर तरीके से अगर इस्तेमाल करके चलें, न्यूक्लियर रिएक्टर का जब आप बात करें, लाइक आई वर्कड विद there's 3 forms of nuclear reactor. Like I've worked at a research reactor, so we were able to figure out which which finger you were wearing a ring on just by putting fingernail clippings into the reactor. So again, nuclear reactors are clean tech मेरे हिसाब से. But then again, you need to be able to manage it, and to do that, you need that scientific wisdom and that culture as well. So both scientific tech and indigenous wisdom needs to go hand in hand for progress. और housing वगैरह के जो उससे पिछला जो सवाल था, उसमें बहुत सारे लोग push कर रहे हैं. For example, there are questions arising about education city as well. कि education city में जो universities बन रही हैं, तो वहाँ पे जो indigenous लोग जो रह रहे हैं, क्या उनको पढ़ाई के मौके मिलेंगे वहाँ पे, या उनको सिर्फ जो है janitors के या PNs की या clerk की इस तरह की jobs मिलेंगी? So these questions are already happening, and they need to move forward. But business वाला जो कहते हैं सवाल था, if you could respond to that, because if you could go back to that question so that Maha can please answer that.
Sure, thank you, Shabir. So yes, to answer that question, so we work a lot with organizations that are trying now to integrate sustainability into their business models. Just quickly to sum up, I think it's really again about internalizing the cost of doing business. That as long as that is included within your budget, within your day-to-day running of your business, it's about creating a circular economy model. Ultimately, minimizing your impact. Developing products which have a long lifetime, which can be used to their maximum output, and at the end of their life, uske saath hota kya hai, right? Somebody needs to internalize that cost as well. Either it has to be the government, circular economy model mein yehi hota hai ki the recycling aspect is also a cost, which is included in the price of whatever you're buying. There are laws in the EU, for example, अब जैसे phones हैं, सबके different mobile chargers होते थे पहले, right? So iPhone had a different charger, your Androids had different chargers. Now they've, as the European Union as a whole, decided to come up with one charger that works for all models. Taki you don't have to spend extra money and create a whole lot of e-waste just on managing and treating and disposing one particular product. And I think that can be done for multiple products and multiple services. For basically any business, if you think about it, how can we enhance utility of our products and our services and reduce the cost to the environment? Yes, there's a cost affiliated with it. Aapka, I mean, you will tend to lose out on certain customers because you won't have like an iPhone charger, but you can use any company's chargers. But really, it's about working together. So businesses need to come together as platforms to think about solutions for industry, like specific industries. It can't be each company trying to do their own thing all the time. There's a need for industry collaboration and, of course, for government support to initially subsidize that until it can be mainstream and affordable for everyone. So thank you all so much for joining us. That brings us to the end of our session. One last question then. Okay.
Can you wait? My question is, my name is Ehsan. I would like to give a very brief introduction so that you can understand my question well. I am the co-founder of a company, Alsees. Alsees is actually supplying biomass to different textile and cement manufacturers in Pakistan. I have been working since last year, and so far I have supplied 60,000 tons of the agriculture residues to these manufacturers. And by supplying this, I have created a demand for the alternative fuel that is an alternate to the fossil fuel, and we have saved a lot of the foreign reserve and generated a lot of employment for the rural people. My question is that what challenges you foresee for biomass in meeting these sustainability targets? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a great question, and actually I've worked with several firms that are now actively looking to source biomass. There's an institution called the Pakistan Environment Trust. वो लोग चाह रहे हैं to aggregate the biomass value chain in Pakistan and develop pellets that can be, sold to, like for example, the textile sector. In fact, Packages Limited, jo ye rose petal, and they make all of these different products. So they've one of their Bulle Shah paper packaging mills, they have developed a whole biomass value chain just to source that particular facility of theirs. So I think there's a huge potential, honestly, for Pakistan, and it solves a couple of problems. So ek to biomass is traditionally burnt, right? So the reason that smog is being created is because farmers basically one of the reasons, I'm not saying it's the reason, but they tend to burn the waste because they want to quickly make it ready for the next planting season. So I think that's one of the problems that it solves. The other thing I'm seeing though, as the demand for biomass is increasing, jo ab ho rahi hai Pakistan mein, the price is going up. People are realizing that there's a value affiliated with it. So of course, if you're in the business, then it's a good business case. So I think yes, it's an opportunity, and you should definitely be scaling it up, because I see a demand already, and it's set to increase. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. That brings us to the end of our session, and thank you to all the panelists.